Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stitching Tales. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Hjerpe.
And today we thought it would be fun to do a little bit of a catch-up, to take you along the journey of what it's like to running a sewing business, some of the interesting things that are happening, some challenges, and of course we also have a lot of nice updates. So Malena, what has been going on in your business lately?
Well, for the last couple of weeks, it actually happened. Quite a few things have happened. We released this podcast, which is amazing. I'm really happy about that. And I also finally am done with Malva tea. So I launched that a few days ago now. And since you have to subscribe to my newsletters to get it for free, I also got a newsletter, which you helped me with. Thank you so much. And if you listen to the previous podcast episode, we talked about newsletters, and I was kind of hoping to avoid having a website, but it didn't sound like that. So now I have a website as well. So quite a lot of things have happened lately. So I'm really happy about that things are moving along,
That's really fun to hear, and I have so many questions about what you're saying. First of all, what is the URL or the address to your new website?
It is hazelhenpatterns.com. So it's very, very straightforward.
Yeah, and so I'm really curious, because this is your first time you tried using a free pattern, right? And it's basically a way to get people to sign on your email list, but also, of course, to learn and get an introduction to you as a pattern maker and to your brand. So how many days ago that when we were recording this was it that you released the pattern?
It was on Wednesday and today is Friday. So 2 days ago. Okay. So it's really newly released.
So how did you market the pattern?
It was only on my own Instagram. I made 2 posts so far. So it's really now I'm gonna of course work with it more and post more and talk about it more on Instagram. But it's only in my own channels I've been talking about it.
Because also, if you're curious about the Malva tea, we're gonna make sure if you listen to this episode or watch it on YouTube, we will of course include a link to Malena's website and how you can get access to the Malva tea. So have you got any kind of feedback from people, and how has the reception been? What is your feeling like 2 days after trying this new format for you?
Yeah, I've got several subscribers to the newsletter, which is really, really fun. Of course, I don't think maybe not so many people have sewn it yet, but I had, of course, a test group, and I got really good response from the testers. And several of the testers actually made several samples as well. A few of them even made 3-4 samples. And I think that's I'm really happy about that, because then it means that you really liked it and you want to make more of it. So that is, I'm really happy about that. So I'm looking forward now to see on Instagram as well, if you are using the hashtag MalvaT, to see other people's make, because I think that's the most fun thing if you see someone wearing your the pattern you made. It's so much fun to see it.
Yeah, it's the ultimate validating feeling, because you always work in a vacuum when you're developing something, creating something. So it only feels real when other people are using or creating what you have created, because that's the ultimate goal, because it doesn't really mean as much it's hard to in Sweden we have a saying that you're writing for your desk drawer, which means that some people only write their dream novel and then they just put it in the desk drawer. To me that sounds crazy. I would never ever do that. Because I honestly think that most of us do thrive on getting validation and feedback and people saying that they enjoy the stuff and sharing it to others. So to me, the concept of creating a sewing pattern just for fun and then put it in the drawer, it makes very little sense to me. Because you don't get the validation.
Absolutely, and even though like this is a free pattern, I still have put a lot of work and effort and everything into it because I want it to be really good. Because this is, of course, if there are new customers and they don't know my brand or anything and they want to try it out, I want to give like a great first impression, of course. And especially if people are gonna like buy fabric and invest time and sewing, like I want it to be really, really good. And if you put a lot of work and effort into it and then you do nothing with it, like, no, of course, I want like as many people as possible to like also enjoy it and use it. So that's, no, it's been really, it's so nice to finally launch something. I think it was like 2.5, 3 years ago since I like launched my last pattern. So it's been a while now. I mean, I've only focused on the book that we wrote together, Fit for Knits. And I said, like, during that time, I'm not allowed to make any more patterns because otherwise it's just gonna, take longer time to finish the book. So it's like, okay, finish the book, then you can move on to make your next pattern. So yeah, I'm happy to be back into the pattern making part again.
Yeah, that's so fun to hear. And also, perhaps you could talk a little bit about the Malva tea. What type of, because teas, there are lots of teas. So what is the Malva tea's kind of angle or the design features?
Yeah, and I'm really passionate about t-shirts. I don't know what it is, but I'm like, that's my thing. I mean, it's not the most complicated garment, like it's not compared to a suit or trouser or whatever, but like how many perfect t-shirts do you got in your wardrobe? So it's like, even though it's a simple just a t-shirt, like it's still really tricky to get everything right. So for this Malva tea, I really wanted to focus on like getting a really, really good basic everyday t-shirt. So it's quite like snug fit at the top, at the shoulder and chest. It has minus like negative ease over the chest. But then since it is quite tight on the shoulder, I want the sleeve to be not bigger, but not super tight. And then so it's like the perfect t-shirt to have like under your cardigan or something, because it doesn't, like if you have a really oversized t-shirt and then you put on a regular sized cardigan, it's going to be that, bulk under the armhole, extra fabric is going to be really uncomfortable. So that I really focused on that it should of course look good on its own, but you should also be like really comfortable if you have a cardigan or sweater on top of it. And then at the bottom it's more relaxed over the hip. It has plus
extra
ease movement. Yeah, so it's not like a super tight or anything, so it's really comfortable to wear. Like it's not, you can have a lunch, you can sit down, it's like not that super tight, so it's still like comfortable when you wear it. So a lot of focus I've focused a lot of getting the right silhouette on it. So I'm really, really happy about it, and I'm actually wearing one right now, a sample underneath this sweater. So it's a good, I really like it. I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a beautiful, beautiful shape as well, because as you said, it's quite shaped and narrow around the shoulders, and then it kind of gradually shapes out, which to me is one of my favorite silhouettes, because I really like. I personally I'm not super fond of oversized because I'm quite short as well, so I sometimes feel like if the shoulders and everything is too wide, I kind of feel like I drown it. But what I really like about the Malva tea, as you say, it has really beautiful shaping, so it flows with the body beautifully, and also because it's so nice. Sometimes, when everything is very tight, it can make you a little bit uncomfortable, even though you are wearing a stretchy knit fabric. So, as you say, it's really nice because it has that nice flow and the exact right amount of ease around the tummy and the hip area. So I think it's really, it's definitely one of those wardrobe staples t-shirt pattern. I think that if you sew one, you will probably end up sewing a lot more, because sometimes we all do need, those like basics knit tops, because they are also quite hard to find ready to wear. There's usually something a little bit off with the fit as well, and it's funny that there are so many t-shirts, but still so hard to find.
I know, exactly. Yeah. No, I was many years ago, I was on a lecture, and the one who was speaking was like, yeah, but how many like t-shirts do you need? We were talking about designing, and I was like, well, how many perfect t-shirts do you got? Well, I don't have like the perfect tee, so obviously we are not there yet. So yeah, of course we need more t-shirt as well. And also it really depends on what kind of fabric you use, if you like or not. And for this one, it's both suitable for like cotton elastan mix or cotton with if it has like a minimum 40% stretch horizontally, but also it's suitable for those more drapey fabric like viscose, rayon, modal, or lyocell. So it's a little bit more those softer, nice fabric with a little more heavier drape. So yeah, no, I think that you can't have too many t-shirts, right? Or
no,
is that just me?
Because I was actually thinking about that because I did my washing last night, and I folded in the washed clothes this morning, and I was thinking I need to update I have too few t-shirts because sometimes when you have this favorite t-shirt, and sometimes especially in some knit fabrics do have a tend to get a little bit worn out with years. So even though this fabric still holds up, it tends to get a little bit, the color might fade, or you get slightly like pilling. It's like a slight signs of wear, especially if you love those soft natural fibers the way I do. So I was really thinking about this just this morning, that I definitely need to make sure that I have more t-shirts, because it's so nice, and because also they are fairly simple to sew, and also because you have the opportunity to do any type of fabric. Basically, you can use a solid color or a print, or I love stripes, for instance. So it's such a nice way of just repurposing, one pattern over and over and over. So once if you know it fits and you nail everything, then it's such a nice way to just churning out. Every t-shirt will be unique, even though it's the same pattern, which is one of the things that I really, really enjoy about sewing those basics.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you have a pattern that you really like, I mean, it's so easy to also make it your own, like make it a little bit longer or shorter, or changing up the neckline if you want to. So it's really easy to hack then if you know that the fit is right. But that's a lot about me. How about you, Johanna? What have you been up to lately?
Yeah, because in the last catch-up, I mentioned that I was working on a trouser sewing tutorials, and based on basically I made a pair of dressier trousers earlier this year, and because I should say that I am very much like a teacher, more perhaps than a pattern developer, and so a lot of the stuff I do is basically just learning, using different platforms to teach people how to sew, especially those things that are, I would say, I don't cater much towards beginner. I would definitely say that my content is more towards the intermediate, not like super advanced, but a few more advanced techniques as well. So, and I've been really like very interested in making pants like the best techniques, because I do find, as I think I mentioned previously also, that some pattern instructions are a little bit confusing, especially for certain parts. The ones that I find tricky is mostly inserting the zipper and also sewing waistband, especially curved ones, because they are quite tricky because they stretch out and it's very hard to get nice on the inside. So when I was sewing these pants, I was like, okay, I'm gonna create a tutorial series. So I'm gonna just try and rip until I find the best methods that I can totally like stand for and that are, proven. So it's not something that I just pull out of my thin air, because I think that's also very important, that when you're teaching something, it has to be something you can really say, okay, I've tried this several times and I can definitely vouch that this method is really, really good. So that's been like my passion project, and it sounds like, oh, just do a tutorial, but if you check out my tutorials on thelaststitch.com, you can go over there, and of course we're going to link to that tutorial series as well. It's so much work, because it just isn't like taking a couple of photos during sewing, it's also doing illustrations for certain steps. So I've been doing a lot like technical illustrations, so it's basically, and also for the zipper tutorial, I also have free download pattern pieces. So if you if your trouser pattern doesn't have the correct pattern pieces, because I do find that some home sewing patterns, they have pieces that are very difficult to understand and sew. So I have created a pack for the fly sheath and for the extensions. So it's going to be really easy if you use these pattern pieces. You will have a much easier time to be successful. So yeah, that has, and also it's good because now we're doing the pod and we talk about stuff. You want to make sure that people are actually gonna they might wonder, okay, when it's done. So I definitely had a bit of a fire burning there this weekend. So I was finishing that. So that's been really, really fun. And I also sent out a newsletter speaking about that, and I got really high open rate, and I've gotten great feedback from the tutorials. And I want to say it's a little bit of a dilemma because, and I would love to talk about this, because obviously I would say that my sewing niche are two things I would say. First of all, it's sewing with knits, and secondly, it's sewing jeans. I don't really have any products or patterns that are about sewing trousers in woven fabric, apart from jeans, but not other type of trousers. But for me, because I also have to create from a place of passion and interest, sometimes it's nice for me to do something that isn't 100% the smartest thing to do from a business perspective, but because it's a personal interest of mine that I want to share, I sometimes deviate from my focus business. And some people will probably say, okay, that's a bad idea. But for me, it's a way of keeping my energy going and actually do something that I enjoy, even though it doesn't make me money in a direct way.
No, I totally understand that you have to have those passion projects, even though it doesn't financially maybe make sense, but it's I gotta do this because I think it's fun and I need that fun to be able to continue doing the other things. So no, I totally understand that. So are you thinking about maybe making some pattern for trousers then, or?
Yes, I would love to do that, and I'm actually doing a pair of trousers. My next sewing pattern is going to be a pair of trousers, but I don't think it's going to have zippers, but you can add them if you want. So I'm actually working with the help of Malena on my next sewing pattern, which is a sewing pattern made trouser pattern with knit fabrics. So, but it's going to have some of those dresser details, such as front pockets and also darts. So it's going to look quite dressy, even though it's super comfortable, because I do focus a lot on knits when it comes to my sewing patterns. Every sewing pattern so far I've done is in knits, but yeah. So that's, but also I think when it comes to the trouser woven fabric thing, for me it's also a way of building connection and building trust, because if people find my content and they feel wow, this is finally someone who has explained something that makes sense. And that's one of a very common feedback that I get, that I've been looking so much to figure out, how do you do this, how do you do that? And this is the first tutorial that actually made sense to me. So for me, even though perhaps trousers isn't my specialty or my niche, it makes sense because it helps people to understand my teaching style, and it builds an interest and a kind of relationship. So that's also, I think, for me, why it makes sense to do this, even though it makes me no money and it took me several days.
But I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. Not your niche. You wrote a book about sewing jeans.
Yes.
Come on. You got that. That's what are you talking about? How does it become your niche if just one book about it?
I don't know. You do bring up a great point, because that's a good thing, when we're chatting like this, because sometimes when you're in your own head, it makes so much sense, right? The way you're thinking, and then someone else calls you out like you did now. You're like, okay, I mean, you do have a point.
To be honest, when you talk about it like that, to me, it will make perfect business sense now to actually make a really a dressier pattern for jeans as well. Because I mean, for me, I'm not a writer, I'm not a journalist. So for me, making the sewing instructions, that's the hardest part. That's where that takes the most time. and you got that already. I mean, basically, it's just more making the package into a PDF sewing instruction, making everything into a like one place. But I mean, you've written things, you have the illustrations. Now it's just the pattern that is missing. So it's like, it's not going to be such a quick pattern for you when you come to it. So I think you definitely should think about it.
Yeah, I know you're absolutely right. And honestly, I think the reason why I don't do it is because I have a how shall I say, I have a fear about doing pattern development for a pair of pants in woven fabrics, because it will be, I feel scared, honestly, because I know it's gonna be it's hard to find a well-fitting sewing pattern for pants out of the box. So to me, I think what I'm scared about is having all that work up front to ensure that the fit and the grading and everything like that is consistent in a large size range. That's honestly my number one fear.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. Yeah. Yeah, because fitting trousers, I mean, that is, I think, the most difficult garment to make it fit really well. So I think, but I mean, then it's a great thing that you are working on the trouser now that are made in knit fabric, because then you kind of ease into it. You, with a knitted fabric, it is a little bit more forgiving when it comes to the fit. So I mean, then you can definitely like try that one out first, and then maybe the next step is making one in a woven fabric.
Yeah, I love that you are encouraging me in this, and I think I definitely need to. Sometimes they say that it's like the big things happen when you go outside your comfort zone, and I honestly think that there is some truth to that saying, because sometimes you're a little bit scared because you have a very like familiar way of doing things, and you have to like move out of that comfort zone. Which because you said that, Malena, in the episode where we talked about our book Fit for Knits, that when I asked you if you wanted to be a part of that project, you said your first reaction was it was like scared. No,
I didn't want to do it. It's like, oh, too scared. That sounds scary. Big commitment, and it's a big project. But yeah, the businesswoman in me said yes.
Yeah, and I'm very happy that you did, because otherwise we wouldn't have that book now, because I would never been able to do it myself. So I'm very grateful that you went outside the comfort zone, and it's also really inspiring for me, because I clearly have some issues there, definitely, when it comes to pants. And also, you're and we're going to address that more when we talk about developing a sewing pattern, I think, but you're also how shall I say it? You are always, in the hands of how people perceive something. So if you do create a sewing pattern, and a lot of people end up having fitting issues, for instance, then it can feel a little bit discouraging, right? Because you're putting something out in the world that people might not be happy with, or for instance. So I think for me, it's also a little bit fear about that, because when you're writing a sewing book, you're able to control all the variables, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. It's like a presented package. But when you are, for instance, releasing a sewing pattern, and maybe people didn't check the fit or didn't measure the pattern properly, or perhaps they didn't use the best suited fabric, or maybe they had some other like challenges, whatever, and that could like end up, not being like a satisfactory result due to many different factors. And to me, because I'm a little bit of a control freak in that way, I find it a little bit scary, to leave all that open, because you have to let go of control at a certain point when you're releasing a sewing pattern.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And of course, when you make a pattern, like, you want it to fit everybody, but the harsh reality is like, well, you have to choose like a standardized size range, and yeah, and I think most people who sews, they are going to be aware of that. well, if they always need to do this adjustment, well, then they probably are gonna have to use that on your pattern as well. So I think, I mean, I hope that most people understand that pattern is a starting point, and then you need to probably personalize it according to your needs, to the fabric, or to your, if you need to make some fitting adjustment or something. But I totally understand that, yeah, you don't have 100% control when it comes to the pattern and fit, because everyone is different, of course. But when it comes to sewing instructions, then it is more or less the same. Like you sew it in the same way, but the fit can be, very, very different. But then you can also be a little bit smart with what type of silhouette or style, or like how the garment should look. Like if you make a super fitted trousers, then it's gonna be to the centimeter right for that specific person, and then it is gonna be more tricky to get a really good fit. But if you make it like a little bit more like a chinos, for example, like a little bit more relaxed fit over the hip, then you have a little bit more ease and forgiveness. So it's going to be easier to fit a lot of different types of people. So you can be a little bit smart as well there with what kind of trouser you make, for example. But it's a constant fear that somebody is gonna sew your pattern and not be happy with the fit. I know that fear.
Yeah, but it's good to address that, and I think also it's good. I think it's good that we are very honest and transparent about this, because I think everyone who's running a sewing business or whatever type of business that you're putting products out into the world do deal with this type of fears, and I think it's also healthy in a way, because we also need to be focused to make sure that we have done the best work possible before we release something. But it's also, we have to, as you say, Malena, we have to let go of control at one point or another, because otherwise we will never be able to release anything if we just let our fears run our decision process. So it's usually, and I never had to do that, but I know I've seen some pattern companies that have actually done new versions or changed a little bit about the fit or something like that, based on feedback from people that has made if there probably has been consistent feedback about a certain fitting issue. Then I know a couple of examples of this over the years that I've seen, that people have actually made some tweaks, which is an amazing customer service, but it also shows that it can happen, and that's probably a good way of addressing it if it does happen.
Yeah, that sounds really like a humble approach to it. Like, we have done the best that we can, so we're going to release it. But then if we get feedback that it's this could be still improved, and from a lot of people, then that sounds amazing that you actually update it and you listen to your customer. Definitely.
Yeah. But speaking about pattern, Malena, because you have released the Malva tee now, but I know that you also have some other patterns in the work, right?
Yes, I've already started on the next one. So it's because also when you, for example, I had a group of testers that sewed the Malva tee, and during that time I gave them 2 weekends, so it was basically 10 days. So during that time I started on the next one already.
So I know that you won't say exactly what it is, but could you give the viewers or the listeners some hint?
Yeah, and
perhaps?
I've started to be really open about the developing process, because I think it's a fun thing to share as well, and to get feedback also during the process. So I don't have any pictures on it on Instagram, but I added stories when I fitted the first prototype. So it's made for knitted fabric, and it's gonna have dropped shoulders with a cuff, so it's not like a satin sleeve or anything. And then at the front it's a big pleat, and and the neckline it's opening up, so how can you say, like it's more of a dressier top, I would say. And it's a little bit funny because I've had this pattern in mind for many years, to be honest. A few years ago when I was at school, I did like like 1 year course in Cloth 3D. It's like a 3D program that you can like basically sew up your garments and try it on an avatar in the computer, which is really like so cool. And then we had like the end project was going to be, we could basically decide whatever kind of project we wanted to do. We had to, make a small collection. So then I did a few different type of garments, and I posted everything on Instagram and on Facebook and asked like my followers, which pattern do you want me to do next? Basically a survey. Like I wanted to see what people liked, and I wasn't actually gonna. I wasn't really happy about the pictures on this one, but I was like, okay, I'll have it. I'll bring it anyway. And this was the most popular by far. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. Well, then I'm gonna do this as a next pattern. And I think I did this course like, how many years was it? Like 3 years ago, something like that. So yeah, for 3 years it has been in the back of my mind, and now I'm finally gonna do it. So it's been a really fun process to actually to start doing it. And at the moment, I've sewn samples in my own size and tried it on. And I also made samples in size 56 that I tried on a dummy here. And I'm pretty happy with the fit and with the grading. I'm gonna have both for B cup, so then it's like no seam at the front, and then also a D cup, and then it's gonna be like a seam from the shoulder seam and straight across the body, so you will be able to get really nice shape into it. And right now I am starting to do the actual PDF pattern. Like I'm working in Illustrator right now, so I always make my pattern in a proper pattern making program called Lectra Modaris. And when I'm happy with the fit, then I export the pattern to Illustrator, so I can open it up in Illustrator and put all the lines in different layers and different colors, and so it's like easy for you to print out at home. But I'm there now in the process. I haven't even thought about the sewing instructions yet. I'm just making the fun part now, the pattern actually.
It's so funny because we're such a great pairing that way, because I love do sewing instructions and I love do technical illustrations, and I find that the sample and development can be a bit overwhelming sometimes. So it's really good that we very much complement each other, I think. And I should also say, because I've seen the pattern, I thought it was really fascinating, because I remember when you did that survey, and I think all the other styles were a little bit more simple in that way. There was like maybe boat neck or symbol T. And while this isn't hard to sew, it definitely looks quite refined, because it, as you said, it looks almost like it could be sewn in like a woven rayon fabric, because it has a very dressy feel, and as you say, the front pleat and the cuffs, everything, it looks very elegant in a way that I haven't really seen that many knit sewing patterns before. So it was really interesting, because we as pattern developers, we often have these discussions that should we do more basics, or should we aim to do a bit more advanced styles in terms of that they do have some more detailing that could be a way to stand out from everyone else, so to speak. So I know that I remember that we had that discussion right when you started that. So what's your thought process about that now?
Yeah, no, definitely want now to make more advanced, like more fun, so like eye candy, like not. I'm still a very minimalistic design person, so it's not going to be too much details, but definitely add on a few more details compared to just really basic garments. So it's going to be interesting to see how that is received. But yeah, I definitely want to have more details now, and I'm already like planning. It's like, okay, this is going to be in jersey, a knitted fabric, but what if next pattern or next pattern it's going to have the same details with the pleat and the neckline, but I make it in a woven garment or woven fabric, and maybe then have like more set-in sleeve, a little bit more dressier, like tunic or dress even, I don't know, because with woven you obviously can have a lot more details like back yoke, maybe a box pleat in the back, and those kind of things. I wanted to have them already on this one, but it's like, no, it's gonna be too tricky to do some of the things if you just have an overlocker. So I'm gonna save those details for a woven version, and I think that's really fun to see how something can be really nicely translated into a knitted fabric, and some details can be much more suitable for a woven fabric, but you still could have a few common details. So yeah, I'm working on this now, but I'm already have like 2 or 3 more patterns in the back of my mind. Like I'm thinking about those. I'm developing them mentally at the moment.
Yeah, that's probably one of the parts that I enjoy the most, trying to develop, and think about all the little details. And we're going to do another episode in the future about what it's like developing a sewing pattern. We're going to go much deeper into this process, but it's definitely goes a lot of thought into before we even start making the actual pattern, because even as you said, Malena, on a simple tee, there are so many things to consider. Every little shape and length and width and everything, it's very much like a fine-tuned work. So you have to really make sure that you do your research and your thinking and your testing before you're able to release a pattern. So it definitely, and I also really enjoy that process, like trying to make the ultimate shape and design with all the details. And also because we are also, I think if you're like a big brand designer, you are maybe don't as versed in pattern making, because it's like a different skill set and you go to different type of schools. But we are coming from a sewing perspective as well. So when we do patterns, we always have to think about, okay, this can't look just nice on an illustration. It has to make sense and be understandable. And also, as you say, Malena, you have to do it on regular home sewing equipment basically, so you can't like go super crazy, because you definitely want to make it doable for a person who is working from home and having a minimal setup. So that's also one of the challenges I find when we're doing patterns, but it's also, I think, a really fun challenge to think about that stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely, because I mean, most of the things you can do with a home sewing machine or overlocker. But I think that, yeah, as you say, like the biggest difference between sewing at home and having like an industrial sewing line, you have like very specific machines out in the industry. Like you have that one machine to do that specific thing, and then another to do that specific thing. So it's like a completely different way of sewing, while here you use the same machine to everything. So yeah, you definitely want to have that in mind, like how you are going to develop how you are going to sew the details on a sewing machine. And for me, like, how am I going to describe this in the sewing instructions? That like the most like, I need to set it on a good level so I will be able to explain it and illustrate it.
Yeah, that's trickier than you think. And it would be really interesting if you're listening to this or watching on YouTube to give us some feedback and thoughts about that, because we do talk about that stuff. For instance, if it's better to have photos or if it's better to have technical illustrations. I know that some of you prefer to have a video, so that's also one of the challenges that we are having when we're doing launching something, that like, what is the best teaching style? And also, of course, we are not having a big team here, right? Because the teams are just ourselves for the most part. So we are honestly, we don't have always the resources of doing like a photo blog tutorial, doing like really nice technical illustrations, and then doing a video tutorial series. So that's one of the things that I get asked about. So what I do, for instance, when I'm releasing a pattern is that I only do technical illustrations, and they're really, I would say they're really, really good, if I have to say so myself, because I work super hard with those. I try to like, I teach myself basically to make them look like Reader's Digest, you know, those old school sewing books. But that takes me a lot of time to do those. But for me, because my like niche is teaching, I want to ensure that. But then I also usually do like a sew along with photos. But I do get asked a lot about, can you do like a video series as well for sewing patterns? Because I do a lot of sewing videos on YouTube. And I do sometimes like a vlog when I sew one of my patterns. But it's so much work. And if you're selling maybe, say, a couple of hundred patterns, in the best case scenario, it's a lot of work to do like a whole video series that perhaps people that aren't sewing the pattern is perhaps finding as useful because it's so specific. So you always have to like figure out a level that will make sure that the one who's using the pattern understands it, but it also has to make sense from a time and financial perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to ask that because on my first pattern I had photos, so then I didn't do any sew along. But then on my my latest patterns, then I have illustrations. Like how do you work with sew alongs when you make them? Like, is it basically every step, but you just take photos of them and write the same instructions and add it on your blog, or how do you do it?
Yes, so it's a little bit of both. I do like a photo series. Usually after I've done like a couple of samples, it's usually I do it when I am doing one of the photo samples for the release. That's usually when I take the pictures. So it's basically like quite late in the process. So what I try to do when I do the sew along is basically just replacing a lot of the illustration with photos, but I also try to make sure that there is a teaching element in it. So for instance, I'm wearing, if you're watching the video, I'm wearing the girly top, which is one of my sewing patterns, and I did the blog tutorial series for that using a striped fabric. So I also focused a lot about how to get stripes to align and how to cut stripes properly to make sure that they align and match and everything like that. So when I did the AV cardigan sew along, I usually offer a couple of different versions for how to like make certain details like the pockets. So for instance, I went more in depth with like a optional pocket version, for instance, in the sew along. So I tried to make it like a little bit more in depth, and I also write even more. I mean, my instructions are quite detailed, but I write even more on the blog. So it takes quite a lot of time to do the series. But yeah, so it's a little bit of both. I definitely try to add value, but also it's just a way of like, if you would ever find something a little bit confusing, I think that if you watch the blog, so I think it's, as I said, I honestly, I'm sure some people have, but I've never had anyone contact me saying that they find my sewing instructions confusing. So I probably must have it like once or twice maybe, but it's not like so I don't really get any. I don't have an idea of how I could improve because I don't know which the best way of doing things, because I honestly I mean, I'm sure some person has made me sometimes, but considering that I released several patterns and people haven't contacted me about anything, I don't know which area I should focus on doing better. But it's also nice that people seem to, hopefully, I hope that that's the reason why, and not that you are like afraid to email me.
No, but you have very detailed sewing instructions. I totally agree there. So I think it's very clear and easy to follow as well, like what to do. So yeah. But have you done any video sew along, or is it just photos you have used?
I've done for the AV cardigan, I've done like a vlog, and for the girly I've also done a vlog. But then it's because it's when we're gonna like the thing is that, you know, as I said, you have to think about where you spend your time wisely. And because I'm a YouTube content creator, one leg in my business, and 90% of the people on YouTube have no idea who I am. They're just looking to help for a specific topic. So they don't want to know how to sew the girly top. They want to know how to sew a really nice looking t-shirt. So I have to, when I do the vlogs, I talk not specific steps about the girly top, but I talk about how to sew a really nice neckline, tips for hemming. As I said, you know, I've also done a video of how to cut and sew stripes, for instance. So that's my thinking there, because again, I cannot, because sewing patterns is such a small leg on my business, like table, so to speak. It's a very short, it doesn't even reach to the floor right now, but I'm definitely hoping that it's going to be at least like an even leg. But so I to me, from a financial perspective, it doesn't make sense.
No, but I totally understand that. And I also think just how I myself use videos. When I Google something or search on YouTube, I know what I'm doing. It's that specific thing that I want help with. So I rather than have like a very short specific task, like yes, it's the neckline, just the neckline. I want to see how they do, not a 20-minute video. Or I mean, that could be fun, of course, as well if you are showing the pattern. But for you, I totally understand your priorities here, that rather make those specific details teaching videos instead of so long on a whole garment. So yeah, it makes sense.
And I would really be interested to hear, you know, everyone who's listening, watching, how do you feel about this, and do you have any points of view? And also think it's good to talk about. So maybe you understand why there isn't like that wide-reaching content about every particular pattern, because the reality is that many of us don't sell a lot of sewing patterns. We sell quite few, and I think the ones that are really successful, they maybe feel it's well invested, because they will probably sell thousands and thousands of patterns, and that can motivate that, because it's just expensive for me to produce a video, or time consuming. If I sell 50 or 100 patterns, then it's for someone that sells 10,000 of patterns. So
yeah, I mean, we have limited resources, both financially and time-wise, so we need to be smart how we spend them. Absolutely.
Yeah, so are we going to perhaps round up now, because again we talked about for almost 50 minutes, but we're definitely going to do more catch-up episodes like this, because we thought it was really interesting to, hopefully you find that too, to talk a little bit about both behind the scenes of what's going on, so you can follow us. And of course, as we mentioned in the beginning of this episode, that there will be links in the show notes if you are listening on your podcast player to Malena's Malva tee out now, and of course also to my trouser sewing tutorial series. There will be a link as well. And do you have any other things that you want to say before we sign off today?
No, I think it's so great to be able to catch up with somebody and talk about it. So it's really, I really like these episodes.
Yeah, same. I love it. So thank you so much for listening and watching, and we talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.